There we go.
Something here.
Okay, folks, tonight we have a very special guest, and it makes it even better that he's a member, one of our own, Dutch Bagley. And I'm going to put his website in the chat for those of you on Zoom, but definitely look up his website. He does phenomenal work. And what's encouraging to me is he really kicked things into high gear after he retired. So I'm on the verge of retirement myself, less than 5 years, hopefully. And I'm really excited to see what someone can do after they leave the former life behind and move on into retirement and kick it into high gear with their photography. I'm going to go ahead and read what Dutch shared with me concerning his little bit of his background. So if you already read this, well, you get to hear it again. So Dutch, being a homeschool printer in his parents' house during his youth, he enjoyed seeing images come to life in the glow of the red safe lights, the developer, fixer, and using dry mount press and the darkroom equipment, which was mostly built by him. Dutch started printing digitally at home after retirement in the late 2013, 10 years ago, and enjoyed framing and hanging those prints on the wall for family and friends to enjoy. Dutch started to enter photographic competitions soon after joining his first photography club in early 2014. Encouraged by his club peers, he entered his first competition in the local Arts Center annual photography contest. 2 images were accepted and hung in the gallery for the exhibition, with a reception day to invite family and friends. He was hooked. So why does he continue to enter, spend money, keep detailed Excel spreadsheets, and incorporate Lean Six Sigma techniques into his workflow to decide which competitions to enter? This presentation may be a cathartic for him to help him understand the whys and wherefores of entering competitions. He hopes so. And I'm looking forward to what Dutch has to say, because honestly, I haven't entered a whole lot of competitions, but I want to. So this is going to be exciting, I think, not only for me, but for all of us. So Dutch, with that, take it away.
Thank you, Jerry.
You're welcome.
Oh, Jerry. That's
That's
the problem with being mature. Thank you, everybody. Pleasure being here. If anybody has any questions, I'll be sort of looking at this in order to go through, but you can ask them at any particular point in time, because it's really more emotional than anything else. It's not that you just have to see every slide or anything like that. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. And we'll start my madness. So we'll hope this works.
Share
Oh,
that screen.
do I have to do anything here to do that? Okay, good. Oh. Okay, you're sharing. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's up now.
Minimize.
Yeah.
Little dashy dashy.
You don't need to see, we see them in person.
Yeah, you see my handsomeness here. It's okay. All right, thank you. All right, so we'll start off, and what I'll do is give you a little bit about me. Like most people, I started off with a Brownie camera from my dad, photographing family, friends, vacations. My father was a picture taker, so he always had a camera with him, so he was a great inspiration for me. He did have a Tower twin lens camera, and most of my uncles photographed too. And I don't know, I never really saw any of my aunts photograph. So that was, now that I look back on it, that was a little bit strange for me. After high school and a year working, I was drafted into the military, and I learned electronics and computers. They sent me up to Fort Monmouth, New Jersey for 6 months. And they said, well, you're good in communication, so you should go to Vietnam. So I got there They didn't have any communications there, so I knew how to do a manual shift car. I drove for the captain of the facility. And I picked up the mail, drove across country to deliver documents and also flew. And we were in a town, so I got to see the local people. Later on, I'll tell you, I'm mostly a architectural, abstract, and motion photographer. I don't do much street photography, as they call it, but while I was in Vietnam, that's what I did because I was enjoying and meeting people. At home, I photographed, all around. While I was in Vietnam, I bought my first SLR, my my analog camera, which was a Minolta SR 101. I still have that camera. I don't use it anymore. I'm strictly digital now, simply because that's the way it is. And I'm not interested in getting into the chemicals and darkroom. I just shied away from that. So yeah, when I was home, I photographed all around the house and with family and friends, and would send prints out to the local photography store to print. But then after a while, my interest peaked and I wanted to do 4x5 photography. I'm the kind of individual who likes to jump into the pool, no matter what it is, and just experience that and see how it affects me. And if it's good, it's good. If it's bad, then you get out of the pool, dry off, and go to another country club and jump in the pool there. So I would go up to a place, Zone 6 workshops with Fred Picker up in Putney, Vermont. And they were typically large format. And I would go up there and photograph, and I did that for quite a few years and learned the format view and putting the cloth over the head and actually standing there for quite a while looking at an image with an 8x10 camera with the bulb and waiting for the sun to get in the right spot, the light to change or whatever that was, expose, flip it over and maybe expose again and go to another location. And I was carrying 6 film holders. So you don't know what you got until you come back and develop them and you look at a negative, and then you still don't know what you got until you actually print it out. So, but that was sort of the core of what I was getting into and how I was progressing and how I was learning. So those things sort of stayed with me. So yes, the Zone 6 workshop, back at my dad's house, I built the dark room, enlarger, built my own dry mount press. 'Cause those things were too expensive. I'm sorry? Oh, okay.
Do we have,
Give us a-
can you turn it off? Oh, shoot. No, we lost it, didn't we?
I'm not getting it. Just ask them all to mute. Yeah, could everybody mute their mics for us, please?
Oh, do you need to say it into here for muting?
Yeah, I think they heard me.
Okay. Testing 1, 2, 3. Are we ready to go?
Yep.
Okay. That was all up until the late 1970s. In the 80s, I got married, wife and I had children. So yes, now you're photographing your children, the events, going on camping trips and those kind of things. And for the next years until 2013, when I retired, I was able to work I became a manager eventually, so I was able to order things, and the electronic things were part of what I knew. So I could order cameras, not digital point and shoot cameras and those type of things. So I sort of got to know what digital photography was like. And I always read reviews that said, a 1 megapixel image is not really like a picture that you took with Tri-X back in the day and so forth. So, and I thought, well, that may never happen. Digital is just sort of, bleh, I really love my film work. But I think that's sort of evolved over the years, and it's gotten a lot better. So just briefly about my work job, I eventually became a manager, and they usually taught you everything because you were responsible in my department for whatever anybody else didn't do. And they did eventually send me out to learn Lean Six Sigma. So I earned a green belt in that, as they say. And it really taught me how to think about consolidating things. And I'll have a slide later on to explain just a little bit about what Lean Six Sigma is and what it does. We're not going to get too deep into that, but it helped me sort of focus what I was doing, why I was doing it, and made the whole process for me easier to do and focus more on just going out and seeing. So I joined my first photography club in 2013, became close with a club member. She was about 15 years older than I was, but she was a Photoshop genius. She was an artist, quote, an actual artist. She had a different discipline in painting and some other things, but she lived nearby, and I would go with her for once a week, and we would meet and just talk about photography. She was a Photoshop person, and at that point in time, I was strictly Lightroom. Take the digital image out, put it in Lightroom, change it to black and white, done. Didn't want anything to do with Photoshop. Of course, you know, once you decide that that's the way you want it to work, it eventually changes, and now I do a lot more Photoshop. That year, I also bought a new Epson printer because now I wanted to start printing my images, because as in Zone 6 workshop, when you go up there, we would develop print and put them up on the wall and have that critique right there to look at the actual image. And ultimately, as I go forward, looking at an actual image up on the wall is really another thing that just drives me to want to enter competitions and just see it up on the wall. So it was all these experiences that made me want to not enter a competition. I was sort of encouraged by club members, as maybe you might feel here or anywhere else that you join, because I do belong to a few more clubs, that they say, oh yeah, the competition is coming up, you got to put in for that, it's nice, you do good work, and you know, eventually you come around to doing that and you put your first images in. So for me, that's really when all the fun began. Okay, did it change yet? Yep. Oh, click on the screen. Okay. Some of the aspects as to why you enter a competition. I mean, you join a photo club, you meet others who want to photograph to make better images, you talk with them, you get feedback, and you get a lot of encouragement. So, and you make new friends. So it's with the clubs I've been in, I know quite a few people in who share clubs, and I see people's names up on the wall, and it's like, oh yeah, I know your name. And I always try to go and introduce myself to say, yes, we were in this competition together, but I've never really met you. And then you have a discussion and you talk about photography, how it grows, how it affects you, and all those kind of things. So I find that quite invigorating. Of course, you go into workshops. I mean, and excuse me, just one side note, there are times when I get to speaking and I'm just getting ready to call Vince's name, and at that very second, I couldn't call his name out. So you may find with my mature age that sometimes I'll stop all of a sudden because that thought just won't come out through the tongue. But anyway, as Vince just mentioned about some of the workshops that are coming up and trips and so forth, those kind of things are things that inspire you to enter these competitions, show your work to others, and just sort of state where you were with them at that particular point in time. It's a good common point between each other, between the groups. Also with the clubs, you learn for the rules and all how to matte frame and the difference between color and not color, and you have those kind of discussions. And it really gives you a chance to finalize where is it that you sit. Like I'm primarily 90% a black and white photographer. I have been up to the Adirondacks, which I'll mention a little bit later on, for the fall foliage. And I've been back 4 years in a row, and it's a retreat. And it's 6 days of doing nothing but going out in the morning and photograph. You come back, you talk about your image, you write about your image. You go out midday, you photograph, you come back, you write about your image, you talk about your image, and you got a third time and you do the same thing. That's for 6 days straight. And it's exceptionally intense. There's no real teaching. It's really just absorbing what's there. You know, I mean, you go wherever you want to go. I mean, the leader is Mark Bowie. He just knows the Adirondacks like the back of his hand. So he can take you, it doesn't matter whether we go out in the rain, the sun, whatever is out there, you prepare yourself and you go out and you photograph. And that is the color aspect that has really pulled me to the other side. That's the other 10% it may be growing, but you know, we'll see. I'm also what I would describe as a rule breaker. If you come to me and say, well, an image should be this, this, and this, then I'll say, okay. And I'll try to not prove you wrong, but say, well, you said it goes that way, but what if I do it this way and you like it, or you say it's really good, or a judge says, yes, that's in. I like trying to do different things and experiment. And like I say, jump into the pool. Let's see if this works now. Okay. Just to note the strong influences in my photographic journey, my father, who photographed all the time, he had 2 jobs. He worked 30 years in the Postal Service as a carrier. And then he worked 30 years with a law firm in Philadelphia where, since he photographed, he became the photographer for the company. So when they went on their outings or had their group celebrations, he was there and he would photograph. And he was a Nikon person and mostly film, and worked in the center city, Philadelphia. So he would go in and take those and he would get 3 copies of each, one that he would keep when he'd get back to the firm, and a spare copy that in case somebody lost something, they would have a copy of whatever event, you know, groups getting together, celebration, the president came in or whatever that happened. So he was a photographer that really, or his photography really inspired me to keep on doing what I do. And maybe it's in the blood, as they say. Of course, Edward Weston, Ansel Adams, and Jurian Olsman, which are people I sort of found out about and discovered while going up to this Zone 6 workshop in Putney, Vermont, because they talked about them quite briefly. We would get quarterly newsletters written up all about the different ways to photograph and the zone system, the big on the zone system. I love going up to New York to the IPAD, which is the Association of International Photographic Art Dealers. And they just have images, prints up there, maybe 80 booths or so. Usually it was at the Armory. Now it's up at Pier 92 or 94, closed down for COVID. But you can walk around and see images by Ansel, the actual image, maybe 3 or 4 versions selling for $10,000, $30,000. Edward Weston, all the kind of people that you may admire and so forth, and some new artists that have come along. So just being able to get the person who's watching the booth or lift it up and actually show it to you, or maybe if it's in a plastic sheet, you can pick it up yourself and actually look at the tones and colors of the image. And I mentioned the last 2, the Zone 6 workshop and the Adirondack Photographic Institute up in Maine. So I'm a volunteer. I volunteer and participate, like I say, jump in the pool, no matter what, where, and why. So these are currently all my memberships. Gallery 14 is in New Jersey. I became a member, but then for some reason I became president. It's a, I think nobody else wanted it. They just needed a name. And we're a group of 13 photographers who get together, talk about photography, but we have a gallery space. You join the gallery and you can have an exhibit every year if you're a full member, and we have half memberships and those kind of things. So, and that's an hour drive from where I live in Elkins Park, which is right outside of Philadelphia, PA. I'm still a member of the Princeton Photography Club, and when Sheila and her husband left, I had volunteered to be on the installation committee to hang the work. They hung in the Robert Wood Johnson Hospital, where you can hang approximately 90 images. or so on the wall. It's up on the second floor. There's nothing but walls, window space in front of it from second floor to the first floor because the cafeteria below and a little escalator. She left and she said, "Oh, you want to do that?" I said, "Not really, but nobody else has volunteered, so I volunteered." So I became the director of curation for that. That was in very late September or so of 2019. Of course, COVID hit in 2020. So, I had gotten the first installation up and it was going good. We have a reception and a lot of people visit there because it's a huge space. And it shut down for COVID. So we initially instituted a membership show just to have something up there. And we decided we're going to leave it up there until COVID is over because it'll only be maybe another 2 or 3 months, maybe 4 months or something like that. And we come back and get it. So, but it wasn't until 2021 that it actually came down. As a curator, I had to go out and find other projects to bring in. And I had those lined up. You have to really go out a year in advance to get people prepared in order to do that. So all these kind of things and being involved with all these different clubs and so forth drives you to talk to other people that recommend things to do. Vince over there, we were both at a exhibition, Pennsylvania Center for Photography with Henry Rowan, and our images were on the wall, and he comes up to me and says, "Oh, my name is Vince, and have you ever submitted to Salmagundi?" I said, "Oh, no, what's that?" So he emailed me the information and I submitted, and first year didn't get in, second year didn't get in, but eventually I did get in, and it was like, oh, wow, that's great. And the second year I got in, I actually sold an image up there. So those kind of things and meeting and talking with people just sort of drive you, and the energy gets flowing, and especially after you get selected and say, yes, you're accepted for whatever. That's pretty much more the emotional part, I guess, for me. It's just how I got involved in all of this, and this will be a little more technical and the how and what we do. And I did mention about Lean Six Sigma, and as you'll see on the big slide up there, it's Lean Six is a larger process, but the lean part of that is trying to eliminate things that are repetitive, and you want to bring your focus, as I'm applying it to photography, get rid of the routine stuffs, put them in a process that, yes, you can do those and simplify those, correct for the errors that you've been making, and essentially go out and just photograph and just photograph and compose it and get it on your camera. You're not worried about anything else. And that's how I look at that. So I've tried to employ some of those techniques into how I put together my process for photographing, printing, and displaying and entering competitions. For capturing, just technically for capturing just the image basics, I am set up for, and what I'm saying here is not what you should do, but this is how I have evolved in getting to the point where I enter a lot, and I've been fairly successful with it, being accepted into competitions. So I calibrated and set up all my devices and computer software to RGB 98 color space. My camera is set for manual operation. I'm an all manual person as far as that goes. It brings me back to the old large view camera tech, because that was all manual. You had to set, had little exposure meters to get readings and so forth. Was no lens to look through. It automatically just did those kind of things for you. And yes, I capture in RAW for my images so I can process them, so I get as much out of the image as I can. And if I want to focus on something that's a little further away, I just hit the zoom button so it zooms the lens in, and now I can focus to make sure that I am in focus where I'm supposed to be, or what I want to be in focus is in focus. And typically with architecture, most of it is, for what I do, in focus. It's not too much that's blurred out. I do have one user setting because I do a motion style of photography where I use live view in my process. So I'm out taking a handheld. I'm always using live view, which typically back to the view camera style. And I'll move my body according to how I want it to do and swipe and do all those kind of things, twist and turn. And I don't zoom. I started off zooming, but I don't zoom anymore. I'm really just capturing that image, looking for the lines. And I take maybe 3 or 4 pictures so that if I'm turning to get a certain direction or composition, I have to expose exactly at a certain time. So I do go back and review that just to see, are you in the right place? Is it where you want it? So you have everything that's included in there. And usually that's with a 10 ND filter. So I can go out at midday and just adjust the f-stop and see, oh, I can bring more light in if I need it, if it's too dark, if I'm inside or outside or whatever that is. And yes, I used the large view, like I said. And I drive myself to take fewer images. I try to look for, like I said, that image in the frame, and if it's not quite composed like you like, and I'm still fixed on that 4x5, 8x10, which will come up later on in the presentation, so that I'm looking the end result. I'm looking to create an image and print it that is, well, it'll come out as 17x22, but that's the size of the print paper. But that's the 8x10 style. I know it's a difference there, but I do it to that to be able to print to my 17x22 print size. I also do use the histogram on the camera in the back and in the software, just to sort of see, are my tones in range and I'm not blown out of any particular area. Because when you go to competitions and judge look at them on the screen, they'll say it's blown out. And I've had them say that, oh, that image is blown out on that area. But I know on my histogram and my print, with even what I've submitted to you, it's really right on target. So I'm not fond of looking and judging at pictures on the screen. I like taking them up like Phillips Mill used to do. In New Jersey, Perkins used to do, where you want to enter a competition, you take that printed image with the frame and you take it in and you leave it, or unless they're judging that particular day, you maybe take 5 images in and they'll call you back or email you back, say, yes, you were accepted with this image, and you go back, you get the ones that weren't accepted. And for me, that's the process that's best. Now that sort of confines you to how far you want to go. Did I do that? No. Doesn't mean you're going to go to Europe or anywhere like that and carry over pictures, but that's the way I like to do that. And I always like the Karate Kid movie that says, wax on, wax. You keep on doing it. You make those mistakes, you learn from it. You make the mistake again, you learn from it. You just try to build up and improve that whole process for yourself. I don't know if you can see that. What I have here is basically my image process for right now. I take it into Adobe Bridge, and all I've circled is how I rename my images. If I go on a field trip somewhere, like if we go up to Ellis Island, I'll come back and all the pictures that were taken up in New York and Ellis Island, I'll batch rename those, keeping in the actual last 4 digits of the film of the image number. Just makes it easier for me to identify where it is that I took it and those kind of things. I mean, there's other ways to do that. Whatever makes you happy is fine. And this is, then I take it into Lightroom. And one of the things I wanted to show here was that I just purchased a 11mm fisheye, as they call it, and it's by TT Artisans. But obviously it gives you that fisheye presentation, and I like to do architecture. So I'm trying to figure a way in order to make it so that the buildings are more square and perpendicular and so forth. So Lightroom doesn't have a lens correction for the TAA lens. So I go into Lightroom and use the guided transform tool, and I'll straighten up and try to get it to align the sides, but fish eyes are really way out of whack. So I go down, always going down to lens corrections and put in the remove chromatic aberration and enable profiles. And I'll select, my camera is a Nikon, but it doesn't really matter what it is. And I'll select Nikon, it'll identify the lens and it'll auto correct for what our aberration is. Really not, it's noticeable, just a little bit of a change. So, but it was, what I was looking for this lens was something that made it a lot more straight, and it didn't have the TA Artisan. So I went through the list down there, and the DJI, which is the drone, it really pretty much straightened up those lines pretty good. So I'm experimenting to see if that will work with this 11mm lens and so forth. So it just, how it applies to the lens, you see how it squeezes sort of like a, I don't know, your waist in the middle and so forth. And then once I've decided that I've got the image and it's straight and those kind of things, on the far right-hand side, when I crop it, I pretty much automatically select the 4x5 by 8x10 ratio, aspect ratio. Okay, this is one of the images. That's the original raw on the left-hand side, and the final that I've taken in through Photoshop, Lightroom, and Silver Effects Pro. Primarily, I use Silver Effects Pro for the toning of it. I have a few presets, about 11 presets in there I have for what I like to do with an image as far as black and white goes. So I did. What I like to do is actually show you the image so you can see what it actually looks like. Yes, I have an Epson P800. Yes, you can walk around if you want to.
Take advantage of being live.
Put a glass over it?
No.
No, I'm going to get to that in a minute. Do you want me to continue, or do I just
go ahead.
wait a little second for you? Okay.
You can really see the difference.
Yeah. And that's really the biggest thing for me is seeing it up on a wall, whether it's in your house or whether it's on a gallery space or somewhere where you've been accepted into a competition. One of the other things I do is I do spray my images with the Moab Desert varnish. I do go to a lot of workshops, and I went with Les Picker, not Fred's brother, they're cousins, he says, but Les Picker's a National Geographic photographer out of Maryland. I think he's semi-retired, but he gives printing workshops. And I went down to several of his, and one created a portfolio of 6 images that we went down for 2 days, and we talked about the image with the group that was there, which images should we put in. We printed them there, and in the end, they were all put in a wooden box, and given back to us for viewing. So Les uses this varnish on every image he makes. So he does 4 sprays over it. Takes about, I don't know, 30 seconds to dry on each side. However you do that, but it improves, according to Les and the label here, cuts down on some UV penetrations that may get to your image and sort of change the colors a little bit, and helps with keeping the water dampness around it, I guess, down or something like that. How that works, I'm not quite sure. I would say at this particular point in time, and for almost since I started printing back in 2014, I am a matte finish. So the only paper I really have ever used is Epson Velvet. Uh, not that there are no other papers. I do have one good friend who has printed for me, who's a Canson ambassador, and his stuff is listed in the his place is listed in the back. He does excellent printing, full service. Forget what I was going to say.
Other papers.
Oh, and he prints on Canson papers, and that image turned out just as fine. It looked a whole lot better than mine. His didn't have the little cast that I had to adjust for in mine, because, unless you're calibrated and maybe tend to use some special software, sometimes those colors after you print them out are not quite exactly alike. So, but mine are very close. I can hold up my print next to my computer and look at them, and they really are very close and so forth. So that's a good thing. Yes,
Is this spray being used with any paper that is printed
as
on?
far as I know, yes, you can use it on any paper.
Could you repeat the question?
Oh, yes, the question, can you use this spray on any paper? And I believe that you can use it on any paper. It's not specifically designed for matte, but that's really all I've used it for. So. And I can back up and say yes, because Les Picker in his workshop, he sprays it on, sometimes you could put a print on a piece of wood or something and frame it that way. He sprays everything. And one of the things it does do is help is you see the dark areas, and that's why I wanted to show this image. You see the really dark images around the building? Sometimes when you print, there might be a speck of dust on your paper. So when it prints, that doesn't get colored in. So then you have a little white dot or spot on there. So there are times when I've gone to say, oh, that's a piece of dust. I put my finger on it to wipe away. But you get to see that little brush when you put that on there. It's not a fingerprint, but I think just that little bit of pressure flattens out the fibers or whatever that is, and you can see that. So I typically spray them before I brush them off first. And later on, I'll show you, I do use some other techniques to get rid of the dots that may be mechanically in there, but I brush them off and then I spray it so that it's protected. Oh yeah, you can show that one around. So that takes care of the printing process. We talk a little bit about the matting and framing process. This is in my file cabinet. It's my tools that I use. I have several sizes of the cutting boards. Pardon me. The brushes, as I talked about, for dusting off a print, so that keeps the dust off it, and I can spray it. And the artist tape and all those other kind of things, and cutters and those kind of things. I do a lot less matte cutting now, because like I said, I do have a printer that's Peter Hewitt, who I generally buy my frames from now anymore. So because he has a full service matting and everything. One of the things I used is that I use the Lean Six Sigma for is mounting a picture in a mat. I'll generally take 4 of these 3-inch pieces of the archival mounting strip and putting in a top, bottom, and 2 sides. And I'll put the print in, which is held by the strips to the mat. So I don't tape them. I don't fold over it. The image is taped or placed in the mat. What that does for me is, on the right side of the image, I can place a new image to switch them out, because I'm using a frame to go somewhere else. Although I have 70 frames, there are times when I had some exhibits up and I just needed to be able to switch out. So in probably no more than 10 minutes, I can take one image out and slip the other image in. And what I'm doing on the right-hand side is pulling the below the straight line is the original image that's in there, the new image is on top and I'm pulling the old one out. So now it's underneath the tabs and being held in there. So I can just put the backing back or on top of it and put it right back in the frame. So it takes me about 10 minutes. Yes.
Sticky part sticks on the back of the mat and it has tabs that aren't sticky that stick out and you're just inside of those tabs.
You're absolutely right.
Okay, I see it now.
You're perfect. Did everybody understand that, or do I need to repeat, or that's good? Okay.
Why do the tabs not push through your paper and indent paper?
They're behind the paper, and then there's the board behind it. What do you call the board? The backing board. Whether,
That's clear.
yes, that's,
Is not beyond the edge of the opening in the mat, behind the opening of the mat.
yes, it's behind the opening, and if you took the image out, you would see the clear, and it's a hard plastic. Yes, you can bend it a little bit, but it's a hard plastic to hold it in place. I've run through a few different modifications for, since I switch out images frequently, pulling out the framer's points on the back, they eventually disappear and fall out. So I went to a new style of using these on the left-hand side, the clips with the screws. There's 4 on each side, and Vince, if you would just show the back of that, if you would. So that's what holds the foam board in. Now, should I use more? Maybe. Should I use, I'm also looking at trying to get a longer strip that's in that same shape that I can put, that will cover more the length of the frame. Because all my frames are all the same size, the mats are all the same size and so forth. I have not found that that's been a problem, being up and down on walls, taking them up, taking them down, for anything shifting or for them coming loose. So I'm satisfied for right now, but I'm always looking to see, is there anything that will work better or easier for me? So I just really got tired of the framer's points. They just weren't working for me. Also, what I've started to do was to put a brown paper backing on the backboard. It just, because sometimes you put your business card in the back, or you take it to an event, you have to write something on there or tape something there, and it sort of tears it apart sometimes. So the brown board is just something I bought from Home Depot. It's a 36-inch roll of whatever. It comes in red, and you generally put it on the floor before you put a floor on top of it. So, and it's very inexpensive. So just something to make it a little more clean, if in fact it sells. So,
I think
yes,
That's called
rose paper. Oh, yes, yes. And the image on the far right is just a picture of the roll that, you just buy it and it comes in 36-inch width, and I don't know, maybe 200 feet or something like that. So,
And you use the framer's point, put that on.
well, no, that happened to be an earlier one. That's frame number 15.
So you put that down and then you use those things that are on the left.
Yes,
Hold it
I haven't
down.
started to do that yet, but I will start putting the brown paper on the part of the left. And at that point, what I may do is spray glue the brown paper on top of it, so it's there totally, and maybe fold it around to the other side of the backing board so that it just has some nice presence. I mean, usually when you go to a store or a gallery to buy something like that, there's usually some type of paper on the back of it to make it, And as Bernice Abbott said at one time, you really need to make photography and keep it real. So for me, that's keeping it real and a piece of art rather than just, oh yeah, put it up on the wall and I just took a picture of it or something like that.
double-sided tape works well too. They make a special.
Oh, they do?
very,
Okay.
very Thin, like cellophane tape, and you just put all on the sides and then put your paper.
Okay, that's an option. Yeah. And as you can see, the difference between the two here, really, Vince just showed you the new system I'm using to put the clips on the back to hold it in. Image on the left-hand side, that was frame number 4. This is frame number 51. So yes, I number all my frames. I didn't when I started out, like I guess most, you go by the artisan frames, the metal ones, and you buy, oh, I need a 13 by a 22, you get 2 pieces and you know, screw them all together, whatever. And that just got to be messy for me. And I would go out and buy a piece of glass for that. And that would make it heavy because I moved to the larger sizes of images. So I'm really liking the no glass and, you know, no reflections when they're hanging in gallery, because you never know where they're going to hang, whatever gallery you're accepted to. So it's nice to have something that's non-reflective, et cetera. And they do make non-reflective acrylic and so forth, or whatever it is to, I don't know how good that is or whether it really reflects, but I like to be able to become part of that and actually see it. And really, I really would like somebody to want to reach out and touch it just to see what is that like, or what is it, you know what I mean?
The problem is they do.
Yes,
I
yes,
saw
yes, they
three
do.
of them get-
Yes, and I would say, when I was doing the gallery up in for Princeton, up in the hospital, Robert Wood Johnson Hospital, we would leave them there generally for about 6 weeks or so. But when we went to retrieve them, and we did it twice, and they had the metal prints, the corners were bent. So they look beautiful, but I'm not a fan of those for putting into exhibitions. If you want to sell it to your friend or give it to a relative or something in an exhibition where you're not there, or you better insure it. It is, we had that happen twice for the Princeton Club, where come back and it's on the wall, yeah, but it's the corners bent where it came off, or somebody bumped into it, or who knows. Yes, they were in hospitals, and maybe that was part of it, but I've shied away from printing on those kind of surfaces. Oh, and I do like using 8-ply mats. So they sort of give some more depth to when you're looking at it. Yes, I buy these because I can't cut these. They're not as easy to cut as the other mats. So I buy them from Peter. So I also have a set of alcohol markers. I did buy, and typically the image on the left with the smaller box is the sort of the black and white shades, because I was doing some at that time. But for when you get those pinhole white spots on there, these pens come with a sharp tip, and you can sometimes just dab it a little bit, and it's just enough to soften it so that a viewer would probably not see that. I am a sepia toned person as part of my style. So I did go out and get a set that had the brownish reddish tone, so that if I had those, or had some issues to cover up, then I could do those rather efficiently. The 2 images on the left, I just wanted to put out there, is that the the image in the center where I drew the red circle, unfortunately, my Epson printer does not print to the very edges. And these particular mats, to my specifications, were cut really tight. And a printer doesn't always necessarily give you that same amount of edge, or very close, but, and this particular image was just a little bit of white showed up at the very top. So I went and got, and you can see after I went and got my pens and marked it where the ink went through on the back of that particular print. So it was just along that very top edge that I wanted it to tone down that white spot. So nothing to, I wasn't coloring, but some needed, you know, darker areas needed a little bit more, lighter areas need light. So you need to start off with light and then work your way up to dark. Yes.
Do judges make any note of that?
Judges, no, I would say no. on the one hand, there's a lot of submitting digitally, so no, that doesn't show up. When you take it there, they all ask for professionally hung and wired frame prints. Taking them to a judge who's on that spot, unless they're looking up, and now this is this particular one was very thin. And unless you're exceptionally smart or sharp, you probably would not notice that. So, and ideally, they should be minimal what happens there. Like I say, it's really just the one little speck, because there would happen to be some dirt fell on your printer between the heads and the paper. And when it comes out, you take a brush and wipe it off and it's still there, then it's just a touch there. So that's the most that I want to try to do. So yes, I've had errors where it really look pretty bad, but my thing was to progress and make it look pretty good. So I'd have fewer of those issues. And this was my slide on, you see the reflections in the left-hand picture and the non-reflections in the right-hand picture. So, and besides that, it's lighter in weight. Carrying these things in and out of the buildings and putting them into carriers and that kind of thing is just, for me, got to be, since I'm mature, just got to be what I wanted to do. And the reflection, because you never know what kind of light is in the venue you're going to show your images in.
Do any of the competitions insist that they have glass on them?
One did, yes. They allowed me to stay in. We were just in that was Lehigh Valley.
Why you also print on that?
No, I just started printing on matte from the beginning, and I just stayed with that. I did not start that way, no. And all these frames were originally up until 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 2019 before COVID, they all had glass. So yes, and heavy and that kind of thing. So are we good on time? Okay. Oh, thank you.
Dutch were asked to please repeat the questions because they're having trouble hearing the dialogue
Okay.
here on the Zoom.
Let me repeat the question.
Well, because of glare and you're not using
All right.
glass, I think, is that why you printed on matte?
Oh, no. No, the question was, why do I print it on matte? Because of the glare. I printed on matte because that's the only paper I used. That's what I was introduced to from the first friend from the club who I had the weekly sessions with. That's what she used, and I just fell in love with it. And I wanted to eliminate and learn how to actually photograph and print with that particular paper. Yes, I may go to another one, but that will be another learning process. For me, I just didn't want to go out and print on this one this time and this one next time and this one next time. I really wanted to become part of what I was doing and feel that this was me. So yes, I don't like the term, but it's sort of creating your brand. It's like a lot of my club members who see an image come up that has a name on it, look at it and say, oh, that's a Dutch. And it's like, but that's the only kind of image that I make. So all of my images are sepia tone, black and white, the same kind of tonal range and that kind of thing. So and I've been doing that almost since day one.
Dutch, I have a question.
Yes.
I see that you're matting and framing everything, and I like what you're doing. It looks good to me. But have you seen in all of your exhibitions and places that you've looked at work, I've noticed a growing popularity of photographers framing their work without mats. They're simply framing them under glass, and they show the full width of the paper without a mat. And it's tastefully done. Have you noticed much of that?
I have not.
Okay.
Most of the places that I have been accepted to, when they ask for you to bring your print or ship your print, there really is a mat around the image and typically a black frame. For me, I like the aspect of looking at the image and not being, when I say distracted, there are some beautiful frames out there, like they put on paintings and so forth that are really awe-inspiring. And I like to take away from that and just a black frame, white mat, and go from there. So no, I have not seen that in the galleries or exhibitions that I've been a part of or seen or visited. So once you make the print, then you need to put it up on the wall. You need to take a look at it. You need to become close to it. You need to see it, for me, every day. Now, I don't print every image that I process that I really like. I really print the ones that are accepted into competitions. I'll show later that I do have a competition folder for every place I've submitted to. And excuse me. Uh, for me, it's actually seeing a print up on the wall. Now, I may look at a print and say, I really like that print. For instance, the pagoda print. I have not submitted that one yet, but I really fell in love with that print when I actually saw it come out the printer. So I decided to put that in it, but I am going to submit it. So my hope is that somewhere, somehow it will be accepted into some exhibition. So those that I have printed and have come back and I've had to take out of the frame and put another image in, I keep all of my boxes that come shipped with the brand new paper, and they're my storage boxes for the older images that I've made over the years. So, and yeah, I didn't think about it, but I think Vince or somebody mentioned that it was like 10 years I've been doing this. It doesn't seem like that. I've been having just so much fun. And just one other thing about the pagoda image, I would like to thank Kim, because I stopped by and we had a conversation. She said, "Oh, have you seen the pagoda?" I said, "No, I've seen it off the highway or something at some previous time." But she said, "Oh, hey, why don't you just go up that road?" I drove up there. It was like midday, and it was like, wow, I liked it. So I pretty much did that almost right away. I sent her a little copy of what I did, and I said the initial, which was close to this, but I said, you can look at it and you tell everybody, but don't share it just yet, because I'm going to put it in a competition. So yes, at the house, I always put images up on the wall to see how they feel, see what draws you in, what does not, give you a feeling that, yes, that print is something that may work well in a competition. So I suggest that if you have a place, a wall, even if you could only put up one, just put up on the wall and just look at it and maybe not use glass or something like that. And you can switch it out and put another one up there. You can devise some way to just get it up there and put your other images that you might want to put in a competition, just so you can see how they look and see what kind of impact. Because for me, the first thing is the impact of that image as to, wow, what really grabs you. It may be color, it may be the subject or anything. So you guys live up in this area, so you can go take pictures of the pagoda. I'd like to see what you guys do with it. However you do that, color, black and white. And if you go down to the Philadelphia Navy Yard, this is the Intrepid, which is on Intrepid Avenue. And the building is actually curved that way. So that is pretty much a straight shot. I just got rid of the trees and the cars and all the other stuff that really didn't matter. One of the things for competition, I put this in there that it really is good to write about your images, whether you're a writer. I'm not a writer, but I do like to write what inspired me about that image, or what drove me to take that. Would I take that image again? It gives you a little more focus on what kind of image you might want to put into a composition that does follow the theme of that competition. Because as I say a little bit later on, you really need to know what the theme is of the competition, because if it's not part of the theme, it's gone, no matter how great your image is. So I like open competitions because my work is a little bit out there sometimes, so doesn't really necessarily fit a specific theme, but sometimes that surprises you. So yes, this was my order statement that I did in Gallery 14. But the other thing I wanted to note on this was that for writing about your images, when I first went to the Adirondacks for the color images in the fall, the very first day I was there, something just hit me and I said, oh, I'm going to write a haiku for the day. Now, I'm not a haiku writer. I had read about them and just knew what they were and so forth. But just we just started talking about them and it just sort of popped up and I wrote my first, every time I go there for the 6-day courses, I write a haiku for the day. And it's typically just a general, whatever you feel. It doesn't have to have anything specific about it. Is how you feel. But what I did for this particular exhibition was that I do, let me back up. Haikus tend to be, or generally were thought of as, oh, nature and pleasant things and colors and all that kind of stuff. So I decided to compare haikus with the structural things, the hard things that I do. So I wrote a haiku for each of the, I did about 17 or 18 images here. So while I was sitting at the gallery, I did ask people when they came in and were looking at the images, did you read the haiku? Some did. Most people, when they go in, don't usually read the artist statement or look at anything else. But some did, and some actually came back and said, you know what, I read that. I understand what you meant when you talked about it in this way and what the relationship was to the image. So for me, just 1 or 2 sentences or sing about it, whatever you, or play music about it if you're a musician or whatever your thing is, to feel it, see it, taste it, use all those senses in order to try to become part of that image or part of that image that you want to submit to a competition. So before entering competitions, if you haven't done that already, I mean, you talk with other club members and the artists and the photographers and the judges, which is what I did. Listen to what they say about others' work, because sometimes you have some of the same issues. You know, there's always, yeah, the horizon is this way and not right, or the golden circle and the triangles and all those things are not working. But sometimes an image just strikes you and just hits you. I think I've judged 2 competitions, and you sort of have to decide what is it that struck you about that image, and how do you rate that. So my other thought is that do your judging on those images yourself, but have something a little more structured so that you can not only apply it to those images that you see, but the images, your images, so that you'll come to an understanding that that's a good picture, or that's a good image, that's well done, or it needs some work, or whatever that is. Yes, listening to feedback from the other images that are judged, like if you're in a competition, it's on the screen during a Zoom or something like that, which some of the things are done that way now. You can hear the judges say, well, that was in, that was out, but I like this one because, I don't like this one because, etc. I've had judges say that they don't like deer. So the deer picture of a deer wasn't in a competition. I mean, to me, that's idiotic. You know what I mean? The judge should be as objective as possible. You know what I mean? I was sitting in on the judging for the Phillips Mill, and Jill Enfield was the judge. 6 hours we spent on a Zoom. There were 6 of us that were muted and didn't have her image up, but we could listen to her do her judging. And one of the things that struck me about her was mostly she was saying in, out, and so forth, 1,200 images, 1,204 images to be exact, and looking on a screen. And but then on one, she looked at an image. The first one came up, which is people sometimes take an image and rotate it 4 times and put it together to create a symmetrical image. Well, that one came up and she didn't understand what that was initially. She said, I don't know what that is. And the moderator said it's 4 images that are rotated, usually in Photoshop, to create a symmetrical image and another art. She says, oh, that's not too bad. In the end, there were about, I don't know, 8 or 9 of those types of images, and she selected 4 of them to be part of the wasn't. So she was objective in that sense. It wasn't her style, it wasn't anything she knew about, but there was enough of an impact for her to say, yes, that image is in there. So you never know. For me, it's always what drives you. It's your work. This is me. You have to say it's me and say, I'm putting it out there. Whether you like it or not is okay, but that's me. I'm putting it out there. You have to be willing to lay down for it, I guess, so. Um, one of the other things that's good to do is, as I said before, create some process for consistency of quality and quality, so that your images are really pretty much done. When I say the same way, have the great result that they should have at the end of the process, whatever that process may be. I've submitted to probably a dozen portfolio reviews, usually a judge that's at a competition. Usually when we're here and the judge is present, you know, I'll go up and say, oh, do you do, or go on their website, do you do portfolio reviews? And I'll take a group of images, typically maybe 12. Now this was before COVID. They were generally charging $60 an hour or something like that. And you just take them in, you have that whole hour for them to tell you what they think of your image. It's another good process to go through if you're thinking about getting into competitions where you're more focused. I mean, to me, that's beyond probably local club competitions, but maybe not. I mean, it depends on where your head is, what drives you, what you think you might be able to do, and how you feel about your image. That, well, I'm really getting pretty good here. I need to up my game. So that's one of the ways that you can do that. I do try to go to a lot of exhibitions, galleries. I go up to New York a lot because I like the architecture up there. I like to photograph the buildings, but I go to a lot of the galleries there, Soho Gallery, Chelsea, been part of Salmagundi, but just to see what their space is. And they usually have an exhibition there. And it's usually maybe some local talent. Oh, they've got a series of images there. They're all generally supposed to work together. So you may work around to putting a group of images that, if you're a flower photographers, that sort of work together or say something together, or that maybe they're the same color, the same theme, the space around them is the same. It's ways of trying to develop what you want to do and focusing in on what's that really great image that I can submit to a competition and maybe get accepted in. And like I said, it's always read, write, and talk about your images. So you love them, and talking with other people will get them to love them too. And like I say, create what you enjoy. When you've entered a competition, the best thing to do is to read the damn prospectus, because it really gives you all the information. I mean, particularly the deadline date and the theme. Those are the two major things as to, you have to meet those. Otherwise, that's the first two things that knock you out. They'll also tell you the size and notification date when they say, yes, you're accepted or not accepted. Then you need to keep in mind the delivery date, the reply. Sometimes they want you to reply that, yes, you've gotten this, and you know that, and you're aware of this, or you need to sign a acceptance form or something like that. And they send you the label form, because you have to label them before you take them out. And there's a reception date. I mean, if it's really local, then you know, you'd want to go to the reception to see maybe you won, because that's when they tell you who the award winners are, typically. Just a side note as to that can get really deep and heavy. I've been accepted into Southeast Center for Photography in Greenville, South Carolina, 5 times. How do you think I get my pictures down there? You drive them down. It's 11.5-hour drive, 11.5-hour drive back. That's to deliver. And it's 11.5-hour down, 11.5-hour drive back to go to the reception. Then 11 hours down, 11 hours back to pick them up. So you see how this can really get you involved, and it can be expensive, which we'll go over shortly. So to help me in order to organize that aspect, that I enter a lot of competitions. So this is really, these are just screenshots, so it doesn't show you the whole thing. This goes down to the L's, but these are all the competitions I have entered. So I repeat going back to them sometimes. So as you'll see later in my Excel spreadsheet, for the first year, I usually copy that into the second year, and then copy that full year, what I've submitted to, what I've been accepted to, copy that to the next year. So I know the annual things that come over and over again. Of course, you get the call for art, call for entry, you get the contest insider, you get your friends who say, oh yeah, there's a competition somewhere. You want to try to enter it, or it goes up in your newsletter or something like that. So all those things keep coming back. So once you get involved in that to a great degree, pretty much like I am, you're driven to find out and know where they are. And then you start to wonder, I haven't seen it up and it comes out usually in September. How come it's not up yet? And then you go to their website to find out, oh, they're not doing it. COVID's over. Okay, well, you don't have to worry about it anymore. So usually through Lightroom, when I finalize and do the JPEG that they want to get with the proper sizing, this amount of pixels on the long side, less than 1 meg, less than 5 meg array, then I save it to these particular folders, usually for the year and the theme title. And that way, when it's time to enter, then my images are there. I know what folder to go to, and these are the ones I'm going to select from. So there's probably more in there that I would be selecting, and then I rename them according to how they want you to rename them. I mean, this does get rather complicated sometimes, so I needed something to sort of keep that all straight for me. So we'll start off a little bit with my spreadsheet. This is only part of the spreadsheet. Oh, no, so this one is the full width. So what I've circled on this particular one is the very first competition I was in, which was in 2014 at the Abington Art Center. And those were the 2 images that were accepted. Had never submitted any competition before, and to get 2 images in, I was just dumbfounded. And I really mean dumbfounded. I said, why did you select 2 of my images? I mean, I'm just starting out. I don't know anything. And it was just something that just floored me. So that was 2014. The others are in purple as gets into 2015 and so forth. Just with local members in the clubs. Oh yeah, you got to submit to this. You got to submit to that. Okay, well, I'll submit to it. And fortunately was able to get in. But those were my first 2. This is my 23 submission so far. From January. On the left-hand side, you'll see the red arrow that's January 1st. And the first 12 or so I did not submit to. Yeah, they came up, but it's sort of a weak period for me this time. I don't know what I was doing, but I just didn't have the energy to submit. So it wasn't until, what's that date? February 10th was the deadline, the Allegheny National down in Columbia, Maryland. So I submitted to that, and I was not accepted in that. And that's one I've done for several years. And I tend to look at those and, wow, that's close by. I can drive down, drop off my images. I can go back for a reception and see that kind of stuff. So that's how I started to develop this chart. So right now, the closest one on the right-hand side says Salmagundi, New York City. That's the first circle over there. May the 1st, they're going to notify you. They notified me at 5 o'clock, and no, I did not get in. So, when I say it doesn't matter, it really doesn't. I've applied there before. I've gotten in before. It's in New York City on 5th Avenue. I said, oh, wow, man, 5th Avenue, a lot of people and money, money, money. So, but the next arrow, pardon me. The next red circle shows you, it keeps you as to what they say in their perspective is their requirements as far as size, 72 DPI, pixel long on the one side and so forth. And that's how I know how those things generally go. I do read the prospectus every year. My voice may be fading. But it does let me know what's happening or what should be happening. And then what I have here is my framing, pretty much analytics. Now, like I said, I have about 70 frames. I locate where they're located, what gallery they're in, and what's the end date for going to pick those up from that particular gallery. But it also includes some of the prices as to what I had to pay for that frame and the monies that were spent in order to create that particular image. So there are things I do have to average out. And what you'll notice at the very top are in the 10 years, the 5 images that were sold. So the very top one, I'll have to look at this one over here. The very top one was something I sold at the Lakefront Gallery, which was a picture that only this one particular person would want because it reminded her of home and her family and those kind of things. And so $195. But with the commissions and everything else, and that's one of the other things you have to be careful of are the commissions. Commissions sometimes will kill you. They're generally at minimum 30, but most of 40 or 50%. So, and what I get to is that you have to decide what you're going to price your image at. So as time went on, I have one at the Da Vinci Art Center in 2018. My listing price was $350. And typically every image I put up at that particular time is always the same price. I don't vary prices, or it just gets too much into the weeds and, oh, well, this one is a little bit better, so that's $10 more, I settle on one price and that's it. But their commission was 40%. So, and it took 90 days in order to get the money, whatever money that was. So I actually made maybe $10 on it because I calculated it's in Philadelphia. I didn't have to drive there. Some of those other things, I had the cost of the paper. I know what the ink costs per image and those kind of things. That's all part of my analytic process. The next one is Salmagundi. That was in New York City. So yeah, I'm charging $750 for that one. And it's sold. The image that sold, I meant to put this in the thing. You can see it on my website. But I go to New York City a lot. I'm not a street photographer, but this one gentleman was sitting on the street and wrapped in blankets, and he had a paper up to his face like this, and he was just frozen there. And as I was walking, I said, wow, look at that, and just took his picture. It's really the only one. I submitted that, and that's the one that was purchased. The person who purchased it sent me an email and wanted me to help her decide how to mount it and put it on the wall in her space in New York City. She lived in an apartment, wanted it down the hallway, so that as soon as you came into her apartment, walked down the hallway, that image was there. Like judges, you can't tell why people buy images or anything. Yes, it's sold, but I don't understand why. So, and you don't always get to know who bought your image. So that's another thing. The other two are 450 that were, Beth Shalom, I don't have that one here. Beth Shalom is the synagogue that's in Philadelphia, Frank Lloyd Wright building that I've done a picture of. So that one sold up in Rhode Island at the Rhode Island Center for Photography. Yes, I drove up there, but they have, I do prepare for that. They have lighthouses up there. So I got the map out and looked for lighthouses. When I go down to Southeastern, down to South Carolina, I look for places on the way. Now, I've been up and down that road so many times. I generally drive down one way and maybe come back a different one. I don't do too much highway. I like to drive through maybe towns and cities because you're always seeing something new or something different there. So for me, that's always an opportunity to take a photograph. Oops, and now we get into some of the cost. So yeah, in 2014, I had 100% acceptance rate. Because I, $30 and one image. That was one of the best years that I've ever had. 2015, it wasn't too bad. I only spent $356, but I only entered 7 exhibits on the far left-hand side. Then it gets rather expensive, which and I didn't do this chart until probably 2019, 2020, when COVID struck. I didn't have anything else to do. So how much am I spending on this kind of stuff? And what's my acceptance rate? I mean, is it worth anything that I'm doing here? So I guess my worst year was 2019 at a accepted rates of only 41% at $1,559. So, and
That's
these,
the cost of entering, not of printing everything.
this is just the cost of entering. no traveling down to South Carolina, no anything. This is the cost, which is not the cost of printing, no. It's only the cost of actually what it costs to enter that competition. So, this year is working out a little bit better. That 71% will come down a little bit because I did not get into Salmagundi this time, got noticed today, so that'll come down. I don't, yeah, my old job, I had to track this kind of stuff where I worked, so that's one reason why I do it. I mean, it's not really that important to me. I photograph because I love it. This is what I like to do. I like to see the image up on the wall, whether it sells or not. So that's me. And judging up for competitions, judges do have the biases, and that should not let them affect their choices. One of the questions is how many judges should be in a competition? We talk about this a lot in our place that Phillips Mill, we just have one, just that one person's. Prior to that, in other places, we've had 3 judges. I've been part of a 3-judge situation where you get an anonymous image, you maybe have a spreadsheet, and you rate it accordingly. And then later on, you get together with the other 2 judges that have done that, and you come up with a consensus that, yes, these were my highest 10. Let's say you're going to put 40 images in. These were my highest images rated, so those 10 should get in. I mean, usually you have somebody who's a technical person, somebody, the other judge is probably, I don't know, part of the theme and more related to the theme. And the 3rd judge is pretty much maybe anonymous and could go either way. So for me, it's like, I really prefer 3 judges for a competition or at least 3 judges. Competitions like the lens culture, there may be as many as 15, 20 judges in that. Maybe all of them don't look at your image, but maybe they have specialties in architecture or something like that. So, but more judges for me is 3 is ideal for me, is what I like to do. I do not research the judges, really doesn't matter. I'm putting my image out there. You like it, that's fine. You don't like it, that's fine. This is Dutch out there. What do you think? No? Okay, I'll go somewhere else and maybe not. There is, I put the note at the bottom, and maybe you can put this out separately, but the NEC, everybody familiar with the NECCC up in Amherst University, University of Massachusetts, or Amherst campus? They haven't had it since COVID, but they usually have an event where 3 days you go up, photography presentations by most of the famous photographers and all of the kind of events. But I just got an email from them that they're doing a presentation on judges where you can ask questions yourself, and they're going to talk about judging and how judging works and so forth. So through this link, you can look at it and read about the event to see if it's something you might want to know about or think about attending. So my questions ultimately become, why do I photograph? Why do I go to workshops? And why do I enter up competitions? I do all that because I just love photography. I love seeing my images up on the wall. I love talking about photography. I like being with photography. And it's part of my blood. I haven't been able to separate that out. So it's what drives me in my life. Fortunately, my wife, she is now retired. Before that, it was a lot easier. Now it's a little more difficult. Also a little more complicated is my daughter has moved in with her husband and her daughter because they're looking for another house. They put in several bids, but they haven't been able to find it yet. So I've sort of slowed up a little bit, but I can find my time to go in and go somewhere on a trip somewhere or a Photoshop adventure somewhere and get my photography in. But this is just love for me. I mean, it's just wonderful to partake of all this stuff and, go out and photograph and see something that, oh yeah, that's what I saw out there. And when I looked at that building, that's really what I wanted in the end. I didn't just do this and say, oh, well, what can I do with that? I went out there really with the purpose of looking at that, making that building and making it look like that in the very end. It was my choice. Yes.
Dutch, do you go basically by yourself, or do you take your wife with you, or, you know, or someone else?
Repeat the question.
Yes, the question was, do I go out by myself or do I take my wife out with me or do I travel in groups? I do a little bit of all three of those. I've done quite a few abandoned America workshops and those types where you go to an abandoned building. Pardon me. I go and take the train up to New York because I love photographing those buildings. That's by myself or with a couple friends that like to go up there, maybe spend the night. My brother used to live up there, so it was easier. He's not there now. It was easier to go up and stay overnight as many days as I wanted to and just walk around. And he knew all the places to go to. He was a concierge at the Four Seasons, so he always had the free meals at the expensive restaurants that, oh yeah, all you had to do was pay the tip and, you know, you got a free meal out of it. So, but he photographed also, both my brothers do. And just, he knew all the places to go to. So it was, when they were building the Oculus Center and all that kind of stuff, we were there during construction. And we were able to get into certain spots and take images before all the people are scattering all around and those kind of things. So while my wife was still working and I was retired, I would go with her. She had a geographic area to cover in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and actually down in Washington, D.C. I would travel with her because they're paying her hotel and renting a vehicle and so forth. And while she was working, I was out just photographing. So, but I like to go out at any time, anywhere, any weather, really. And just because there's always something out there somewhere, somehow.
Dutch, for writers, there's a thing called writer's block. Have you ever had a time in your life where you had trouble taking your camera out, and how did you deal with that?
The question is, there's something called writer's block, and if there's something similar for cameras, and if I have ever felt that I just didn't want to go out and photograph. That has not happened to me. I don't keep my camera in the car. I keep tripods in there. But whenever I have to go out somewhere, like I brought it up here with me tonight, so it's possible I might stop somewhere on the way, take the tripod out and the camera, or maybe not the tripod, just the camera, and I'll photograph something. I'll see something that's, oh, the night light shining on it or something like that. So no matter where I go, if I'm going out to an event, or I don't take it out when I'm going grocery shopping or something like that, but traveling to another exhibit or anywhere like that, I do take that camera. So I've never really had the feeling of, don't do anything with that. And weather doesn't make any difference. I put in the rain, you know, you have your rain bag and so forth, or I will admit this, and I don't admit it to a whole lot of people, but I also take photographs while I'm driving. And let me do a little clarifying. I like motion photography. So on some of the trips I've taken up into the Adirondacks or into the Pine Lands, where there's dirt roads and no traffic, no people, no anything like that, I do some motion photography. And you'll see that on my website if you go up there. But what it is traveling on that dirt road. And I have a process. I actually gave a presentation on motion photography, which includes this, but sitting in the car, setting up my pre-focusing and pre-setting up my camera and going about 2 or 3 miles an hour, you know, and I can still look forward and I'll visualize something that's coming up. And usually for that particular thing, it's trees. And the kind of motion I'm doing is an exposure where as I'm moving forward, I'm moving the camera around so that the subject I'm looking at is sort of stationary, but everything else around it is moving. So if you'd like to see some images like that, they've become very interesting. I've gone around in a national park, huge national, but it had probably a 30-foot diameter drive around circle. So I drove around there, it had a long exposure. So I'm actually going around it and photographing it. And it's interesting to see how that sits up and works out. So that's what I mean by driving while photographing. But I also have set up where in my I've got a lease car now, but in my older car, I set up where I could put that camera up in the, up in the sunroof, thank you, sunroof, or on the window with a Gorilla Pod or something like that, by just making some arrangements, adding some things into mix that gave it correct support and using a remote that I could still drive and photograph. I've also done some being a passenger, doing the same, doing the same thing, at going 70 miles an hour, let's say, getting the right camera settings and actually going back and pardon me. And I had an exhibit just on those particular images, so it's a lot of fun. I like to try and experiment with a lot of things. These are some of the resources that I was throwing out to you. Oh yeah, down there is Peter. He's the printer, professional printer, Canson ambassador. And
Peter is a member of our club.
oh, he is. Oh, okay. Hello, Peter, if you're out there. Oh, good. Yes, yes, he's a full service. So I've known Peter for quite some time now, and part of the he's done printing for a lot of different people that I've known being in exhibitions, primarily with that I know of with the Pennsylvania Center for Photography, which was in Doylestown with Henry Rowan. And usually when I've been asked about, how do I photograph, or I mean, how do I print? And some people go to Bay Photo or some of the other local places, and they're not necessarily always happy. And I always refer them to Peter. And I have not heard anybody who's not been greatly satisfied with what Peter does. So.
What was the call for entry? Call for entry.
Oh, I get an email probably 2 or 3 times a week, call for entry.
Can you repeat that question?
Oh, yes, the question was, what was the reference, the URL up there for call for entry? Call for entry is a website that sends out emails that tells you what calls are for not only photography, but almost anything else. Paintings and so forth. So when you go in, and some some venues use call for entry, I think, to enter your images in. So you go through their process, you create a portfolio and so forth. But they send you out notices that, oh, deadline's coming up for these particular shows. If you want to enter, just click on that, select photography, and it'll show you all those shows that are photography, locally and far away.
The museum, the Pennsylvania Museum of Art, the Art of the State
Yes,
competition, they use CAFE, call for entry, CAFE.
yeah,
So once you're into their system, then when you apply to some other competition that's call for entry, then everything's already populated pretty much.
yeah.
So it's a clearinghouse.
So that's pretty much it for right now.
I have
So
a
thank
question.
you. Thank you.
I have a question for you, Dutch.
Yes.
You haven't mentioned anything about entering fine art, high-end art festival types of things where you actually go there and, go to an art festival that's in the liking of what you like to do, like a high-end art festival. I'm thinking of State College Festival of the Arts. Have you ever done anything like that?
The question was, have I ever done anything with high art festivals and those types of things? No, I have not. I'm not really familiar with that process or how that works. I have thought that I might like to go out with some other photographers as a group and put up a booth sometime somewhere and just see what happens. But that's a little bit more than I'm ready for right now. So I'm not that familiar with those types of festivals where you enter in and look to get accepted.
Which I can.
Well-
Okay.
If folks are interested in that, locally, the Goggle Works has their Art Fest where you could put up a booth, and that's usually in December. I've done that for 3 years. I haven't recently. And you have to be able to populate your booth with images, but That would be a local one that you have to apply for, it's juried. And they will not accept you, and so I think that's what
Yeah.
Ray was referring to.
That's you done with your slideshow?
Yes, that's the end of it.
Okay, so we'll stop sharing your screen. Yes.
They might have questions. We need to.
Yeah,
He's
Don't go away.
Oh, okay.
That one connected to.
We're connected. Is this live for the screen share? Anyone here have questions for I can attest to his enthusiasm with exhibitions. I think it is. He really works the exhibition. He loves talking to the artists, and he's in his glory as he's going around meeting everybody. Your work is great. Love it.
That is-
Talk.
That is one thing I do like to do, is just to meet the other artists, meeting you guys here, because everybody who has an image, huh? Yes, I do love doing these artist visits and so forth, and meeting people, because every image that somebody does is potentially an inspiration for me to do. And like the Beth Shalom one, somebody did that image and I thought I could do a different way, and that's what you do. So everybody's a great input. I love watching everybody else's pictures to see what they do and see, wow, how can I incorporate something like that into what I do? So.
Although it's nice to sell your image, how much of that potential of selling an image in a show is the motivation for you? Is it, it's more, it sounds like just getting your image out there for people to see and comment on.
Oh, yes, for me, it's just getting an image up on the wall, having people look at it, enjoy it, and that's really pretty much it. When I say I don't care about, if it sells, it's nice, but the return on the money is not that great after you consider all the fees and money that you've spent. So I'm not looking for a great profit, not looking to raise my prices to $3,000 or anything. It's just put it up on the wall, sit back and enjoy it. If you like it, that's fine. If you don't, okay, you're still good. Yes.
Along that line, do you consider that like an original and you only sell that once? Or do you make copies of that?
The question was, do I consider my image one of a kind, or do I look to make more copies available for sale? Ideally, what I'm currently doing is making 1 of 5 images, so that if I sell one, then there's only 4 left to available for sale. On the back of each image, in pencil, I put a copyright date, the title, pardon me. I sign my signature and I put the number, usually 1 to 5. If I've sold that image already, and as the slide shows said, I've only sold 5, so there's only those individuals one sold. If one sells again somewhere, then that will be number 2 of that one. So, and one of the other things I was saying, yes, I do print, but I print for me to take it to the particular place. If I'm going to have a sale somewhere, or somebody goes on the website and wants one, I'm going to contact Peter, have him print it up, frame it, and ship it. He'd do all those services. So I won't have to get involved in that part of that. So.
Thank you very much, Philip. That was fantastic.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Yeah, stop recording.
Are you not?